You've been told your past is fixed, that reality exists independent of you, that consciousness has nothing to do with the physical world. But what if I told you physicists have been hiding something? Not because they're malicious, but because what they discovered is so profoundly disturbing, so reality-shattering that it threatens everything we think we know about existence itself. They call it the skeleton in the closet. Let me tell you something. I'm going to show you an experiment today. A simple experiment with boxes and marbles, and by the end of this video, you're going to face a choice that will change how you see everything. Your trauma, your healing journey, your power to create reality. Here's the thing. Most people think quantum physics is abstract, something happening in laboratories with particles they'll never see, something irrelevant to their daily struggles with anxiety, with past wounds, with feeling powerless in their own lives. They're wrong, because what happens in that quantum box? It's happening in your consciousness right now. It's happening every time you observe your past, every time you collapse a memory into a fixed story, every time you choose which version of reality to make real. But here's where it gets interesting. The experiment I'm about to walk you through isn't theoretical. It's been done, thousands of times, with the same shocking result every single time. And when physicists talk about it, and trust me, they don't talk about it often, they use phrases like deeply troubling and philosophically uncomfortable. Niels Bohr, one of the founders of quantum mechanics, said anyone not shocked by quantum mechanics hasn't understood it. But here's the kicker. He also said we shouldn't think too hard about what it means. Just shut up and calculate. Why? What are they so uncomfortable with? Let me ask you this. What if the reason they're uncomfortable is because the experiment proves something they desperately don't want to be true? That observation doesn't just reveal reality, it creates it. That consciousness isn't separate from the physical world, it's the sculptor of it. And if that's true for a marble in a box, what does that mean for your life, for your past, for every fixed story you've been carrying? Stay with me here, because what I'm about to show you will challenge everything. And unlike most spiritual teachings that tell you you create your reality without any proof, this comes from objective science, from experiments anyone can verify. This isn't philosophy, this isn't metaphysics, this is physics, cold, hard, repeatable physics. And here's what nobody tells you. Once you see this, you can't unsee it. Once you understand how observation collapses possibility into actuality, you'll never look at your trauma the same way again. Ready to go deeper? Let's start with something simple, almost too simple, and watch what happens when simplicity reveals the impossible. Picture this. 2 boxes, 1 marble. That's it. I know what you're thinking. Really? This is the revolutionary experiment? Bear with me. Here's how it works. I take a single marble. I put it in one of 2 boxes. Let's call them box A and box B. I don't tell you which one. Then I close both boxes. Simple enough, right? Now comes the first test. I'm going to open the boxes one at a time. Let's say I open box A first. What do we find? The marble, sitting right there, complete, whole, exactly where you'd expect a marble to be. I check box B. Empty, nothing there. Let me do this again. New marble, new placement. This time when I open box A first, empty. Box B has the marble. We do this hundreds of times, and every single time, the same result. The marble is completely in one box, the other box is completely empty. The marbles scatter randomly across the screen when we track where they land. Exactly what you'd expect, right? The marble is in one box or the other. It was always there. We're just discovering which one. Most people stop here. See? Reality is fixed. The marble was already in one specific box. We just didn't know which one until we looked. And that's where almost everybody gets stuck. Because that explanation, that comfortable, common-sense explanation, is about to get demolished. Here's where it gets wild. Let's change one thing, just one variable. Instead of opening the boxes one at a time, what if we open them simultaneously? Same boxes, same marble, same setup, but this time, both boxes open at exactly the same moment. Watch what happens. The marble still appears in one box, still completely whole, still looking exactly like a normal marble should, but then something strange starts showing up. We do this over and over, hundreds of times, and the marbles that land on the screen behind the boxes start forming a pattern. Not random anymore, not scattered everywhere, a pattern, stripes, bands, areas where marbles love to land, areas where marbles never land, a structure that depends entirely on one thing, the distance between the two boxes. Let that sink in for a moment. The marble appears whole in one box, let's say box A. How does it know about the distance to box B? The box it's not in, the box that's completely empty? Think about that. The marble is sitting complete and whole in box A. Box B is empty, we can see it's empty. Yet somehow, the distance between these two boxes determines where the marble lands on the screen. The pattern changes when we change that distance. Here's what no one tells you. For that marble to know about the distance between both boxes, it has to have been in both boxes, simultaneously. I'm not making this up. This is the actual conclusion from the experiment. The marble, that solid physical marble you can touch and hold, was not in box A or box B before you looked. It was in both boxes at the same time. As a wave, spread across both locations, interfering with itself to create the pattern you see on the screen. But here's the kicker. When you open the boxes sequentially, one at a time, no pattern appears. The marble is in one box, completely solid, and the distribution is random. Same boxes, same marble, same setup. But different ways of observing produce completely different realities. One observation method, marble in one box, random distribution. Different observation method, marble in both boxes, pattern formation. What changed? Not the boxes, not the marble. You, your choice, your decision about how to observe. This is where most people start feeling uncomfortable, because we just proved something impossible. The marble is in one box when you look one way. The marble is in both boxes when you look another way. That's not supposed to happen. That violates everything we think we know about reality. And here's where the resistance kicks in. Your brain right now is probably scrambling for an explanation, some way to make this make sense without accepting the impossible. Let me guess what you're thinking. Are you ready to hear the most common objections? The boxes must be prepared differently. That's the first thing people say. There must be some trick, some hidden mechanism. Maybe when we're doing the sequential opening, the boxes are set up one way. When we're doing the simultaneous opening, they're set up differently. Fair enough. So let's test that. Same pair of boxes, prepared identically, everything the same. But I'm going to give you a choice. Right before we open them, you decide. Sequential or simultaneous? Your free choice, made at the last possible moment. What happens? The result depends on your choice. Choose sequential opening, marble in one box, random distribution. Choose simultaneous opening, marble in both boxes, pattern formation. The boxes were prepared identically. The only thing that changed was your decision about how to observe them. And that decision determined the physical reality that appeared. Let me repeat that. Your observation choice created the physical outcome, not revealed it, created it. Okay, but maybe the marble has some kind of undetectable radar, some way of sensing both boxes even though it's only in one. Nice try. But here's the problem. If the marble were always in just one box, with or without a radar, you'd never get the interference pattern. Interference requires waves. Waves from both boxes meeting and creating those bands of light and dark. One wave source can't interfere with itself unless it's actually coming from two places simultaneously. The math is brutal here. The physics is unforgiving. There's no way around it. Before observation, the marble is not in box A. It's not in box B. It's not hidden in one with a radar. It's in a superposition state, literally existing in both locations at once as a wave of probability. And here's the part that should terrify you. But that's insane. You're saying reality doesn't exist until someone looks at it. Am I? Let's be precise about what I'm saying. Before observation, there's no actual marble sitting in a specific location. There's a wave function, a field of possibility, real, physical, but not localized. The marble, as a solid, localized object, doesn't exist yet. Observation collapses that wave function. And here's what's stunning. Just gaining knowledge is enough. You don't have to see the marble. You can open box A, find it empty, and immediately know the marble is in box B. That knowledge alone collapses the wave. So you're telling me the world doesn't exist when I'm not looking at it? That's solipsism. That's crazy. Hold on. I didn't say that. Let me be very clear about this distinction because it matters. The experiment shows that before you observe, reality exists in a superposition. Multiple possibilities coexisting simultaneously, not as separate realities. As one unified wave state. When you observe, you don't create reality from nothing. You collapse the wave into one specific outcome. That outcome becomes objective reality, meaning other people see it too. It's not just in your head. The glacier is there whether you look at it or not. But here's the catch. It exists because it's constantly being observed. By air molecules, by photons, by the environment. Observation is happening all the time at the quantum level. Big objects appear stable because they're constantly collapsing their wave functions through environmental interaction. But small things, things isolated from observation, they remain in superposition, in possibility, waiting for consciousness to collapse them into actuality. And here's where it connects to your life, your past, your trauma. Because memories, they're not big, stable objects. They're reconstructions, reobservations. Every time you remember, you're collapsing the wave function of your past into a specific form. What if you could choose which form? This is the moment where everything falls apart, where the skeleton in the closet reveals itself fully. Let me show you the logical trap, the inescapable conclusion that makes physicists so uncomfortable they literally tell students, don't think about it. We have one set of boxes, prepared identically, no differences in setup, none. But we get two completely contradictory results based purely on observation choice. Sequential observation. The marble is in one box, only one, completely localized. The other box is empty, has always been empty. The marble was never there. Simultaneous observation. The marble was in both boxes, had to be. The interference pattern proves it mathematically. There's no other explanation for the pattern. So which is true? Was the marble in one box or both? Both, and neither. And this is where language breaks down, where logic hits its limit. The marble was not in a definite state before observation. It wasn't secretly in box A with you just not knowing. It wasn't in a state of either A or B, but we don't know which. It was in genuine superposition. A state that is not one or the other, but both simultaneously. A state that has no equivalent in ordinary experience. And your observation, your free choice about how to look, determined which aspect of that superposition became real, not became known, became real. Here's what nobody prepares you for. If the marble doesn't have a definite position until observed, and the marble is made of atoms, and atoms are made of quantum particles, and your body is made of atoms, then what does that mean about you? About the chair you're sitting on? About the room around you? Big things are just collections of small things. If small things don't have definite properties until observed, how do big things suddenly become real? The answer physicists give, and I want you to hear how uncomfortable this sounds, is for all practical purposes. For all practical purposes, big things act real because they're constantly collapsing through environmental observation. The air, the light, everything touching them is observing them constantly. But that phrase, for all practical purposes, that's not physics. That's philosophy, that's comfort. That's them saying we don't actually know where the line is, but let's not think about it too hard. Bruce Lipton said, "We've been living as if we're victims of our biology, our genetics, our past, but quantum mechanics reveals we're architects." Observation shapes reality at the most fundamental level. Joe Dispenza built his entire teaching on this principle, that changing your internal observation changes your external reality. Not metaphorically, literally. Because observation collapses probability into actuality. This isn't the secret. This isn't positive thinking. This is quantum mechanics, and it's been proven thousands of times. So here's my question for you. If observation creates reality at the quantum level, What are you observing in your life? Let that sit for a moment. Just sit with it. Everything you've been told about reality, that it's fixed, solid, independent of you, might be fundamentally wrong at the deepest level. Your past isn't a videotape that plays back exactly the same way every time. It's a wave function you collapse every time you remember, every time you observe it. The story you tell yourself about your trauma, that's one collapsed state, one possibility, but the wave function of your past contains other possibilities, other interpretations, other meanings, all coexisting in superposition until you choose which one to collapse into reality. I know this is uncomfortable. I know your mind is fighting this. Because if this is true, then you've been giving your power away. You've been acting as if your past determines your present, when in reality, your present observation determines which past becomes real. Not erasing what happened, not pretending trauma didn't occur, but changing the wave you collapse, the meaning you assign, the reality you create from the field of possibility. This is the skeleton in the closet, the uncomfortable truth that makes physicists squirm, because it suggests consciousness isn't just observing reality, it's participating in creating it. And if that's true for a marble in a box, it's true for everything. Your memories, your identity, your potential. The question is, are you ready to step into that responsibility, into that power? Because here's the paradox. The moment you fully accept that you're creating your reality through observation, you also have to accept that you've been creating your suffering through observation too. That's not about blame. It's about power. Power you've always had but never knew how to use. Let's go deeper. Because understanding the physics is one thing. Applying it to healing is where the real transformation happens. Here's where quantum mechanics and healing intersect in ways most therapists never tell you. Traditional trauma therapy operates on a fixed past model. Something happened. It's done. It's recorded. Now we process it, cope with it, learn to live with it. But what if that model is wrong at the quantum level? Every time you remember a traumatic event, you're not playing back a recording. You're reconstructing it, re-observing it, and in that moment of observation, you're collapsing the wave function of your memory into a specific state. Most people collapse it the same way every time. Same emotions, same meaning, same sense of powerlessness, and every time they do, they reinforce that collapsed state. They make it more solid, more real, but here's what the quantum box experiment reveals. You have a choice in how you observe, and that choice determines which reality manifests. The trauma happened. I'm not saying it didn't, but the meaning of that trauma, the emotional charge, the way it defines you, that's the wave function you're collapsing with every observation. And superposition means other possibilities exist, other meanings, other interpretations, all equally real in the quantum field, waiting for you to collapse them into your experienced reality. This is what Joe Dispenza means when he talks about breaking the habit of being yourself. You're not just changing thoughts, you're changing which wave function you collapse when you observe your identity. This is what Bruce Lipton discovered in epigenetics. Your genes aren't fixed destiny. The environment you create through your observation, your beliefs, your stress, your consciousness, that environment determines which genetic possibilities get expressed. Genes exist in superposition. Trauma exists in superposition. Your potential exists in superposition. Observation, conscious, intentional observation, collapses those possibilities into actuality. Let me be clear about what I'm not saying. I'm not saying just think positive and your trauma disappears. That's spiritual bypassing. That's dangerous. What I'm saying is this: the trauma occurred, but the story about what it means, the identity it created, the future it predicted, those are collapsed wave functions, and wave functions can be collapsed differently. It requires more than thought. It requires coherence. Your thoughts, emotions, and actions aligning to observe a new possibility, to collapse a different wave. Most people think healing means accepting the past as fixed and learning to cope. But quantum mechanics suggests healing might mean recognizing the past isn't fixed. It's a superposition of possibilities that you're constantly collapsing through observation. And if you can change how you observe, you can change which past becomes real for you. Not erasing what happened, but collapsing a different meaning, a different identity, a different future trajectory from that same quantum field of possibility. This is the power the skeleton in the closet reveals, the power physicists are so uncomfortable discussing. Are you ready to use it? Let me tell you something radical, something that will probably sound insane until you really sit with it. You are not discovering who you are. You are collapsing who you become. Every moment your identity exists in superposition, multiple versions of you, multiple possibilities, multiple timelines, all coexisting in the quantum field, and every moment through your observation, through your focus, your attention, your emotional investment, you collapse one specific version into reality. Most people collapse the same version over and over. They observe themselves through the lens of their past, their trauma, their failures, their limitations, and every observation reinforces that collapsed state. But here's the shift. What if you started observing differently? Not pretending you're someone you're not forcing affirmations you don't believe, but genuinely changing the lens of observation. The field you're tuned to, the wave function you're collapsing. The quantum box experiment proves observation determines outcome. Not sometimes, not metaphorically, always, physically. Your focus, your attention, your emotional state, they're not just thoughts. They're the quantum observer collapsing the field of possibility into your experienced reality. When you wake up and immediately focus on what's wrong, you're not just being negative. You're actively collapsing the wave function of your day toward more of what's wrong. You're the observer choosing which interference pattern forms. When you revisit your trauma with the same emotional charge, you're not just remembering. You're recollapsing that wave function into the same painful reality. You're opening the boxes the same way and getting the same result. But, and here's where it gets revolutionary, when you change your observation, you change the collapse. Not by denying what happened, but by observing it differently, by asking different questions, by collapsing different meanings from the same quantum field of your past. Think about it like this. The marble experiment shows that before observation, both possibilities coexist. Marble in box A, marble in box B, both real in superposition. Your healed self and your traumatized self. Both exist in superposition right now, your abundant self and your scarce self. Superposition, your powerful self and your victim self. Superposition. The question is, which one are you collapsing through your observation? Every time you focus on your limitations, you're collapsing that version. Every time you emotionally invest in your past identity, you're reinforcing that collapsed state. Every time you observe yourself as powerless, you're creating that reality. But the inverse is also true. Every time you observe possibility, you collapse toward it. Every time you emotionally invest in a new identity, you strengthen that state. Every time you observe yourself as the creator, you become the creator. This isn't magic. This is physics. The same physics that makes the marble be in both boxes or one box depending on how you look. Joe Dispenza calls this breaking the habit of being yourself. But it's more accurate to say, stopping the habit of collapsing the same self. Bruce Lipton showed that your cells respond to the environment created by your observation. Your beliefs create the chemical environment that determines which genes express. You're not stuck with your biology, you're collapsing which biology manifests. And here's the most profound part. The quantum field doesn't judge. It doesn't say, this observation is better than that one. It simply responds to coherence. Coherence means your thoughts, emotions, and actions align. They're all observing the same possibility, all collapsing the same wave function. This is why affirmations alone don't work. You can say, I am abundant, while emotionally observing scarcity. The emotion is the stronger observer. It wins. This is why visualization alone doesn't work. You can picture success while your body feels like a failure. The body's observation collapses its own reality. True manifestation, true reality creation, requires coherent observation. Mind, heart, and body all tuned to the same frequency, all collapsing the same wave function. The skeleton in the closet isn't just that observation creates reality. It's that you've been creating your reality all along. You just didn't know you were the observer. You thought you were discovering your limitations. You were collapsing them. You thought you were stuck with your past. You were recreating it with every observation. You thought you were a victim of circumstance. You were the quantum observer determining which circumstance became real. This is what physicists don't want to talk about because it puts radical responsibility on consciousness. On you. Not responsibility for what happened to you. You didn't create your trauma. You didn't deserve your pain, but responsibility for which version of yourself you collapse moving forward. Which meaning you assign, which timeline you observe into existence. The past is a superposition of possibilities. Your present observation determines which past becomes real for you now. The future is a superposition of possibilities. Your present observation determines which future you collapse toward. This isn't philosophy. This is quantum mechanics applied to consciousness. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. So here's my question. What are you ready to start observing differently? Let me give you something practical. Something you can do tonight to start collapsing a different wave function. Before you sleep, your brain enters a suggestible state, the border between conscious and subconscious. This is the quantum moment, when your observation is most powerful. Here's what most people do. They review their day, everything that went wrong, every regret, every failure, and in that suggestible state, they collapse tomorrow's wave function toward more of the same. They're opening the boxes sequentially, same way every time, getting the same result. But what if you opened them differently? Tonight before sleep, I want you to do this. Close your eyes. And instead of reviewing who you were today, observe who you're becoming. Not as fantasy, as reality in superposition, as possibility waiting to collapse. Feel it in your body, the confidence, the peace, the power, not as someday, as now, as the wave function you're choosing to collapse. Hold that coherent observation for as long as you can. Thoughts, emotions, body, all aligned. All observing the same reality. You're not pretending, you're not lying to yourself. You're collapsing a wave function that exists right now in quantum possibility into your experienced reality. The quantum field doesn't care about your past. It responds to your present observation, your present coherence, your present choice of which wave to collapse. This is how you start. Small, consistent, coherent. Every morning before you open your eyes, same thing. Observe the version of you that you're collapsing toward, not who you were, who you're becoming. And here's what will happen. At first, it feels like pretending, like you're making it up. That's your old collapsed state resisting. That's the sequential observation pattern trying to maintain itself. But stay with it. Because observation creates reality. Not instantly, not magically, but consistently, coherently. Now let me tell you why physicists hide this skeleton in the closet. Why they're so uncomfortable with these implications. Because it destroys the comfortable myth of objectivity. The idea that reality exists out there, independent of consciousness, that we're just observers discovering what's already there. The experiment proves that's false. We're not discovering. We're collapsing, we're creating, we're participating in manifesting which possibility becomes actual. And if that's true, then every physicist, every scientist, every person who observes an experiment is influencing the outcome. Not through bias, through consciousness itself. That's threatening. That's destabilizing. That suggests consciousness is fundamental to reality, not an accident of evolution. So they say, shut up and calculate. They say for all practical purposes. They compartmentalize. They keep the skeleton hidden. But you don't have to, because you're not trying to maintain objectivity. You're trying to transform your life. And transformation requires accepting the uncomfortable truth. You've been collapsing your reality all along. The question is, will you do it consciously or unconsciously? This is the power the quantum box experiment reveals. This is what the skeleton in the closet really means. Your consciousness isn't separate from the physical world. It's the observer that collapses the wave, the sculptor that shapes reality from infinite possibility. Not through magical thinking, through coherent observation, through aligned focus, emotion, and action. And here's where it gets even more interesting. This is episode 15 in the Observer Effect series. 15 episodes exploring how observation shapes reality, how consciousness collapses the wave, how you, yes you, are creating your experienced world moment by moment. But here's what nobody tells you about that skeleton in the closet. The engineers and physicists who build the technology you use every single day, they know something they rarely talk about, something that connects the quantum phone in your pocket to the quantum consciousness collapsing your reality. In the next episode, Observer Effect 16, I'm going to show you how 1/3 of the modern economy runs on quantum mechanics. Not theory, not philosophy. Actual quantum principles powering the device you're watching this on right now. And here's the kicker. The engineers who build these quantum technologies, they've developed what physicists call a benign schizophrenia. They've learned to think in contradictions, to hold two impossible truths simultaneously. Sound familiar? Because that's exactly what you're learning to do with your consciousness, with your past, with your power to collapse multiple realities. But there's a reason they don't talk about the deeper implications, a reason they focus on the practical stuff and avoid the mysteries. And that reason connects directly to everything we've explored today about consciousness, observation, and reality creation. I'll show you the bridge between the laser that scans your groceries and the consciousness that collapses your healing. Between the transistor in your computer and the quantum observer collapsing your identity. You'll see why the same physicists who prove observation creates reality go silent when asked what that means for human consciousness. Check the description below for the playlist link and the next episode. Trust me, you don't want to miss this connection. If you're feeling a spark of recognition right now, if something in you knows this is true even though your rational mind is resisting, hit that subscribe button. Because this conversation, this understanding, this community of conscious observers, we're just getting started. Drop one word in the comments that captures your biggest takeaway from this episode. Just one word. Let's see what we're collectively collapsing. But here's what I really want you to hear. You are not broken, you are not stuck, you are not a victim of your past. You are a quantum observer, standing at the intersection of infinite possibility, with the power to collapse any wave function you choose. The marble is in both boxes, always. Until you observe, your healed self and your wounded self coexist. Until you observe, your abundant future and your scarce future are both real in superposition. Until you observe, which one are you collapsing tonight? That's your power, that's your choice, that's the skeleton in the closet. Welcome to Quantum Consciousness, welcome to Observer Effect, episode 15 complete, episode 16 awaits. And trust me, what you're about to discover about the technology in your hands will change how you see the consciousness in your mind. Now go collapse some wave functions. I'll see you in the next one.